And we are recording and streaming on Thursday, January 30th, 2025 at 12:02 p.m. Eastern Time with retired Captain Douglas Ernest in your book, Spirit of a True Patriot is in the description. And we were just talking beforehand about as of actually everyone watches this show. Actually, maybe we could tie it together because your book is about overcoming everything, faith in God as your rock and your shepherd and moving forward. And everyone that watches this podcast knows, unexpectedly losing the biggest sponsor of the show the other day. And hey, it's my responsibility. I'm owed nothing. If I want to do this show for a living, I have to make it work. Um, there might be some over now, granted, I'm not going to even try to say that this is the same as, physical warfare. I understand that. But in terms of just general, it makes me think that's actually the quote of my background, my background right now. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. Calvin Coolidge. So that's where I'm kind of coming from right now, and that might just be me, trying to make excuses for not having a 500 IQ. I'm like, oh, I work hard, but that's kind of where I'm coming from right now. But for all the listeners, please introduce yourself, man, and then we'll just kind of wing it.
All right, my name's Douglas Ernest, and I'm a retired captain from the U.S. Army. I served in Desert Storm at the age of 17 and spent 7 months in the infantry over in Saudi Arabia back in 91. I joined the Army back in 90 to get some college money. And 6 months later, I found myself on the battlefield in Saudi Arabia. And then I ended up making a career out of the military and spent 20 plus years serving in the infantry and the armor and retired as a captain back in 2009. Simultaneously, while I was in the military, I had started several small businesses from cleaning companies, construction, home remodeling, auto service centers. And then later, I actually ended up landing on my dream career, which was a Corvette dealership. And now I have a business called Corvette Warehouse, which is the largest Corvette in South Southwest America. And Tommy, one thing that rang out to me is when you had mentioned, your challenges you're going through. Everything that happens in life happens for a reason, and you got to know whatever you believe in the Lord, bigger being than us, that everything happens in life to serve you. And I learned that in the military. It might not look strong today, it might look, but everything stretched
Yeah,
stronger and mightier from the challenges that you come today. And in 5 years, you'll look back and say, what was the problem?
yeah, yeah. No, that's one thing I
I,
struggle with more and more is like, okay, it's like, do I believe in God? Yes. Do I believe like Christ is king? Yes. Do you believe God is in control? It's like all these yes, 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 yes. And then not only as a theoretical, but like in my own experiences in 5 years of this show and almost 1,700 episodes, like, is it true that things that at first appear cataclysmically unfair and like the universe is conspiring against you, do those turn out to not only end up being not as bad, but actually being very, very good, like astonishingly good? It's like, yes, yes, yes. Okay. So you are now at another crossroads where it seems like everything's bad. Is it going to get better? I'm like, no, it's all fucked. Nothing's going to get better. There's no purpose to this. It's like you cannot hold both thoughts in your head at the same time. God has guided you through every step of the way. Correct. Is he going to guide you the next step? No, 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 not this time. So, you know, I always preach that the downfalls will often appear as aids in hindsight. At almost 11 years ago, I lost my older brother to suicide, and that has emboldened me and empowered me and given me more appreciation of life, of friendships, more empathy of people of where people are coming from than anything else. And it has allowed me to move forward. It's allowed me to pursue what I want in life because it's just like, hey, life ends in a second. But I think at the time, if I had tried to, if somebody had tried to tell me that, I would have shot them. If somebody had tried to tell me a week later that this was a blessing, I think I would have killed them. I think I would have killed them and then lit myself on fire. So like but then I preach it all the time. I'm like, no, it ended up being a blessing. And but now the tables are turning and it's like, all right, are you going to practice what you preach? And it's like a kid with Brussels sprouts. I'm like, no, no, I don't want to. But can you go into some of yours where I mean, being in war at 17, how I want to hear your hindsight is 2020. How in God's name did that end up being a blessing?
And it's funny you say that, Tom, because I learned, in the army they would always have this saying that the brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes. So you can tell yourself, yeah, life is great. Everything's going my way. I got the woman of my dreams. I got this life I envisioned for myself. But your fucking mind will tell you, oh, this is fucked up. And you'll focus on something else. So it's as a man, as a powerful man, you got to be able to take control of your own mind and your brain and say, this is the way I'm going to live my life. When I say come, you come. When I say heal, you heal. And you do what I tell you, not do as you please. So that's something that, they teach you in the military, and they use that as a form of discipline, where you discipline yourself to do things even when things are hard. And like I had mentioned before, man, I joined the army to get college money. I grew up in a pretty tough part of town called Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it's part of a bigger city, Chicago. It's about 30 minutes north of Chicago. Chicago, Milwaukee is just like one big city, and it's got the big city problems like Chicago, and it's even got a worse crime rate than Chicago, if you can imagine that. And I grew up in this area, man, and there wasn't much opportunity. Everybody in my family was either in the military or they were worked in the manufacturing sector. And my grandpa was a Korean War veteran, and everybody in my family just looked up to this man. They thought he was such a badass. Not only was he a badass and been to the war, he was also a loving, nurturing family man that everybody relied on. So I think that was part of my, my stretch, if you will, to be able to join the military. So I wanted to be like my grandpa, man. I wanted to get some of that, and everybody look up to me because I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. So I joined the army to get some college money, expecting I'd come back a badass in shape and lose some weight, work out, get some money to go to school, meet some pretty girls. And instead, 6 months later, here I am in Saudi Arabia, and I'm sitting in a tank and a 113 armored carrier, and they're telling me people are going to kill me, people are going to gas me. And it was like, living on 2 hours of sleep a night. And that's when I learned about patriotism. I learned about relying on your sisters and brothers in the battle. And I made the best friends I've ever had my entire life are still my best friends from that war. The guys that were 17, 18, like me, working their ass off to just stay alive and try to, keep each other going. Because some people out there, man, were having mental fucking breakdowns because they're getting told you're going to lose your leg. You're going to get gassed by Saddam Hussein. So 7 months later, after we have 4 days of ground war, and then after that, it starts being guard duty and insurgencies and clearing the battlefield and clearing all the tanks and clearing out all the sites that were just explosions and desecrated. And then, after I came back from that, I had this new leash on life where I appreciated every second of every day. Everything was bright, and I wrote about it in the book. Everything was colorful. It's like I forgot about all these colors in the world. When you're in the desert for 7 months and you come back to the real world, you see everything with vibrancy and clarity, and you appreciate everything. And I made a promise to myself at that time that I was going to take advantage of every moment of the day. I would never forget my creator that kept me alive, because I was praying 20 times a day to the Lord to keep us alive. Everybody was going to church in the desert because we were all thought we were going to die. So that experience allowed me to catapult my life to successes beyond my dreams, because I now can reflect on that and say, God, you think this is tough? My My kid got a bad grade in school. I got to go see the principal for my kid misbehaving. God, it's so hard, but no, it's not as hard as it was going to the war. I can handle anything. My business, I've been in business for almost 30 years. My business has collapsed 4 times where I've been recommended to file bankruptcy. I did not, thankfully, by the grace of God. And every time I'd say, you know what? It's bad. It's tough. But you know what's even tougher? What's tougher is cleaning up the mess the drill sergeant made me in basic training, throwing my shit all over the ground and telling me to get on my hands and knees and clean up toothpaste with my fingers. So that's hard. But the things I deal with and this life that we've been blessed with today is not hard. And I'm able to reflect on some of these adversities, and that's able to catapult me to further successes and grow when things are tough. And I hope I can share that with people, especially my fellow veterans that are suffering and those that need a helping hand, because our government doesn't have the resources to take care of all our sisters and brothers that are struggling right now.
Yeah, doesn't have the resources. Yeah, not allocating. That's
No,
you
they piss
know,
away all the money and give it away to other countries and then give it away to immigrants coming across the border,
yeah,
but they can't take care of the veteran that's on the street, hooked on drugs, hooked on alcohol, can't get medical treatment. And I
that's
was one of those guys 20,
yeah,
25 years ago.
yeah. That's my blanket statement right now. When it's you're throwing out all these people from all the hey, you know what? Until you get murders down to zero, kick them the fuck out. And then when it goes to well, we're cutting off, you know. We're cutting off aid to Africa for HIV. Hey, in a perfect world, sure, kumbaya, we'd all live to 500 and nobody would ever cry. And I've been saying this day in and day out, just the last couple of days online, when people are like, "How are we cutting off aid to Africa?" Get veteran suicides to zero a day, and then I'll give a fuck. If this doesn't mean you hate people in Africa. This doesn't mean you know, don't have empathy to, people in Ukraine or Taiwan or it doesn't mean that you're allowed to still feel for them. There's nothing wrong with taking care of your own first. There's absolutely nothing wrong. And that's kind of how I feel. And so to war, no sleep, you're gonna fucking die. And it's just that bombardment, and then you come out and this isn't as difficult. It's there is kind of I don't know what word I'm looking bell curve at asymptotic I don't know where you do want to remember that stuff. You do want to remember how hard it is. You do want to. I had a buddy a couple not even a month ago from college whose brother just took his life, and I reached out to him and I actually called him the other day. I haven't talked to him since 2013 probably. We ended up talking on the phone for like 30 minutes. And I realized as I was talking to him, and I wasn't sugarcoating it, I was saying you have a decade of almost unimaginable torment. It's one thing to lose somebody, it's another thing when it's suicide, because then you go, what could I have done? And as I'm saying this to him, and I'm telling him, I'm going, one day you will only smile when you think of him, and it's going to take a while. And I have pictures in my kitchen of him. I have a picture right behind the computer. And when I look at him, I just smile. I'm like, man, John would have thought fucking Donald Trump is the funniest motherfucker alive. But as I realized, as I was telling him on the phone, how little I actually appreciate that I'm at a point where it's only smiles. I'm like, for a long time, I was addicted to benzos. I gained 80 pounds. I was in a psych ward. I had to move home with my parents at age 25 for 5 years. Like all these things where you go, the life I once yearned for is now here. And remember that. I'm saying all that to say there's also another side where the discomfort and the perceived challenges now, going to visit the principal with your son or me, I'm like, I lost the sponsor. I'm like, that's so much easier than losing a sibling. There is also something to be said for you also don't want to only think about how this isn't bad, because that would, I think, procedurally lead to a form of contentness. You go, well, it's not as bad as that, so I'm good. You do also you don't want to like fuck up your day and say this is all so bad. But you also there is I think there is a goodness to feeling discomfort, even if perceived by your brain and it's not real, because that's what continues to push you forward. Do you feel that at all? Where it's okay, sure, I'm not in a tank, on no sleep, gonna die. But it is also good to be like, even if I know this isn't a real threat, it's good to say I need to be earning 10% more. That because that's what
Yeah,
drives you forward.
yeah, absolutely. You got to find the balance in between that gets you there and keeps you going and propels you forward. And what I've also found, from, not me, I didn't make this up, but from people that I've served with that were my mentors, and that was, we always dedicate yourself to a higher being, that, you know, you find something else to serve that has a higher purpose. And for me, I've always felt in the last 20, 25 years that was my country. And before that, I didn't have a purpose in life. It was, to party, sex, drugs, rock and roll, get drunk, chase
Yeah.
girls, raise hell, party, go hunting, and then later it was like, wow, man, I got to appreciate this great life I got. And there's another purpose in life. And for me, it was my country. It was this great, like you got the flag in the background, man. I still look at that flag today and it gives me chills. It makes me appreciate, when I was a kid, I never paid attention to U.S. history. And now it's the most fascinating fucking thing on the planet to learn about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Woodrow Wilson, President Grant, who was also a captain in the army during the war. And it's like absolutely intriguing stuff that I learned now in my older years. And I dedicated myself to a higher purpose, which is my country. You mentioned during the Trump election, I was the only person on my block that put a Trump flag, and I got two flags in my fucking house. And my neighbor, one of my neighbors, who's a diehard Democrat, and my friend, because I'm still friends with Democrats, even though I don't agree with them, he had said, what was wrong with me for putting a Save America flag on my gate? And my first reaction was to say, because our country needs to be saved, we're fucking sending our country to hell in a handbasket. And I end up not saying anything to him, remained friends with him. And I was the only person on my block of 20 houses that put a flag up before the election. The only person that had a Trump flag up. And, do I apologize for it? Absolutely not. I don't care if he won or lost. I believe my country is the best country we have. If we lose our patriots, if we lose our patriotism, then we have nothing left. We have to, being the greatest nation in the world that's been around for over 250 years, we have to maintain that. And it's guys like me and you that can keep that alive. And if you don't get that message out, it's going to be dead. Our country in the last 4 years was almost washed away. I'm a firm believer, Tommy. If Kamala Harris would have won that election, it would have been over. There would have been another 20 million immigrants coming. There'd be boats coming from Europe and Africa and all sorts of places around the world, unloading criminals and very, very bad people into our country. And sooner or later, we'd be overrun. First, our money would deplete. We wouldn't have enough tax dollars to pay for all these people. Our American citizens would be overridden with crime. And then people like me and you, we can't take up arms and defy the government. So what do? You just give up. So it's like, we were pretty close, man, to losing our country. And, we can see by the flag, we can see from the red map that Trump turned, that the rest of the country thinks just like us and said, you know what, enough's enough. Our country's not built on these principles of stupidity and asinine and a derelict running our country. And we're going to go back to the principles that made us this great nation we are today. Then for that right there, that's what catapults me forward, is that sense of higher being, that sense of it's not me. I'm just a little microcosm in this universe. And there's always something bigger than me. There's a higher purpose. And, it's my country. And as I got older and had a bunch of kids, because I'm a proud father of 6 kids, it's now my
Holy
higher
shit.
purpose in life. Yep. Busy, busy. Now my higher purpose is to take care of these kids. They need me. And without me, they wouldn't have a great life. They'd struggle. So to me, I know that that's my number one thing in life. And something that, that, that it catapults me to keep going and keep working and stay strong. So that's what I've been at, man. I'm finding a higher purpose to stay strong and move forward in life, brother.
In terms of, the pain and the difficulty and the challenges and the, being good. It's a sentiment I see with because I'm with you. I mean, on one hand, it's I always have to kind of callous myself because I'm 34 and every election in my memory has been the most important election in history. And after a while, it starts to kind of you're like, okay, I get it. Yeah, the democracy's at stake, blah blah blah. Seeing the last four, though, I mean, really seeing Trump in office and then 2020, the stolen election, BLM and Antifa, doing this podcast, seeing firsthand censorship regarding COVID, the absolute raping of the southern border. You start looking like, yeah, no, that was it's if you steal one, you can steal all of them. That they didn't manage that the second time, it would have been over. And so it's easy now, though, in the same way that you look back and you're like, yeah, Desert Storm was fantastic for me. Or I look back and I go, yeah, losing a brother really kind of shaped and gifted and instilled the sense of appreciation that I never would have been able to learn, even if I had gone out of my way to try to learn appreciation. Like meditate, be grateful for the fact that you have, clean clothes. I'm like, yeah, it's a little different when you go from losing a sibling to getting to a point where it doesn't ruin every day of your life. All of that to say, I think it was honestly, I think it was good that 2020 was stolen, that we saw COVID, that we saw
What a great
BLM
perspective,
Antifa.
man. Yeah.
And now again, if you went back 4 years and said it, I'd probably shoot you. I'd probably say, are you fucking kidding me? But now, because it's not just that Trump's back in and no, now he can do his second term. What he's doing now is like 10. If he had gotten in 2020, it would have taken him 10 of those terms to do what he's doing now. He is on a war path and he has a mandate from people. Even myself. I'm a very conservative person. 4 years ago, I would have been like, this is kind of a bad look throwing people out of the country. I'm like, maybe we shouldn't cut off aid. 5 years later, I'm like, Smedley Butler, Navy on both coasts, Marines, Army on north and southern borders. Fuck everyone else. Fortress America. Take care. Like, and I know I'm of everyone I know and more of like the conservative podcast. I'm probably like the least, just in comparison to, I mean, I'm friends with fucking Delta Force guys, and like so as a nation, I think we've kind of seen. I mean, Hurricane Helene, the day or the next day that we announced we're building a railroad in Lebanon, and people are dying in North Carolina, East Palestine, Ohio. Biden cutting off the monoclonal antibodies to Florida in 2021. I look back at that censorship left, right. I'm off YouTube, iTunes, Reddit, I mean, I look back at that and I go, yeah, does it suck I lost my sponsor? Yeah. But you know what? I don't now feel like any given day that there just might be a full-on Marxist revolution and I'll be shot in the head for being a dissident. I'm like, that's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. So your thoughts on that? Do you think there's any, is that, and again, it's easy, and now that Trump, it's easy to say in hindsight, it probably was good for us.
That's funny you say that because I was pretty devastated from the previous election because Joe Biden told us what he was going to do. He said, "I'm going to open the border. I'm going to give away all our money to other countries. We're going to create DEI. We're going to pit people against themselves with the color of their skin. And we're not racist, but yet." If you're a different color, you can't get this job and so forth, like DEI policies they put into the military. And I'm still going to college and I was going to these classes for DEI and they're the most
Yeah.
idiotic.
Oh,
Just, oh my God, man. Just, they tell you we're doing this in the name to alleviate racism, but yet they separate us and tell us you're this color, so you're this, and you're this color, so you're that. And I would go to these DEI meetings and I was like, this is the definition of racism. 30 years ago, I would have got kicked out of the military for this. How in the world are they teaching this crap? So he said he was going to do all these things, and he did. And like you said, my wife said the exact same thing. Our country needed that because Trump was so highly pushed back against his principles and people didn't think that oh, you're being mean to people that come to this country. We just had illegal immigrants come to our country, take 12-year-olds into the woods, rape the little girl, desecrate them and cut them up with a knife, and the media acts sympathetic to the immigrant. Just think about that these people should be taken away their life. They shouldn't even be on this planet. But yet the media that we know that's supposed to have our best interest as Americans is sympathetic to the plight of these people. And it's so far fetched to the left that things have gone so astray, and it's hurt our country so bad. And like you said, maybe it was needed because the people that were in the middle before, the people that thought, you can't um, be so hard lined on certain issues, they're now like, holy shit, look what happened to our country. Oh my God, I don't have any money. Oh my God, my fucking gallon of milk costs $10 and a carton of egg costs $10 and I can't buy anything. My business at my Corvette warehouse is desecrated in the last 2 years. I lost more money in 2 years than I made in a decade. And I know why, because of the economic policies of our government by increased spending, giving away money to other countries, not looking out for the American people, EV mandates where people are told, oh, you can't buy a gas car, you got to buy a EV car. Just the most stupid, idiotic policies. It's like somebody just got a handbasket of bad ideas and picked them out one at a time to see how could it destroy the American economy and give people and consumers less money in their pocket. And I've lived through that. And without that, we wouldn't appreciate what's about to come. And I really believe that because my business, since Trump was elected, has probably gone up 50%. And that's just from the mentality and thinking of people. It's not gotten any better. The economy's not better. Growth hasn't increased. Interest rates haven't come down. But the thinking of the American consumer is that things are going to get better, that these crazy things will pass, and that we keep reverting back to that red map. I've done hundreds of these shows, and I've said over and over again, look at that map. That map across the country is almost all red. There's a bunch of people in this country that love this country, that don't want to see it flushed down the toilet, that don't want to see our little kids murdered and see people suffering and see people on the streets homeless as we open the border to people that come here, take our resources, take our money. And one last thing, Tommy, I got to remember, there was this guy that I served with in the military who was a general, and he was my mentor. And he was taking it back the last few years. And he had, we had some good conversations, and I always looked to him for mentorship. And he would tell me about his internal suffering from having to oust people that were being let out of the military for not taking the COVID shot. And he said, this was hard, man. I got a rule. I'm the boss. I'm a leader. I got to do what I'm told. I take the shot. I know I don't want to take the shot, but I took it so I don't get kicked out. And I got to oust these people. Now, do I like it? No, but I got to do it because it's my job. And he was constantly working on these orders to oust people, to try to convince people to take this stupid shot. And he turned in his career. There's 200 generals in the military. That's it. And that general, I would say, gave up his service, and he had another decade in him. Think of the millions, tens of millions of dollars that were spent on that person to train them to be a general. And he said, you know what? Fuck this stuff. Getting my brothers and sisters out for a shot, teaching people to pit against each other because of the color of their skin. And he just said, enough's enough. I'm going to get out and do something with my civilian life because I'm not happy in my career. It's not what I signed up for 30 years ago. And I'm going to take my big check and get out and move on. And just detrimental and negative downside for our country, because you take literally, it costs tens of millions of dollars to train these people, plus the tacit knowledge that they get, the experience to be able to run a battlefield and to intuitively understand how to make decisions under extreme stress so that your soldiers can stay alive. And these people are exiting the military. So without that happening, without this going on, we wouldn't have, like you said, we wouldn't have understood how good we're about to have it as things improve. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I didn't like it, but maybe it was just what the country needed to see what happens when you make the most asinine decisions with the country's resources and the country's patriotism, and just do everything you can to counterattack everything good for our country. And now our people are going to appreciate everything coming forward, because I know I will. I'll never take it for granted when I can buy a gallon of milk for $4 and people come buy a car from our dealership. I'm never going to fucking take it for granted again. I used to think, I got enough money to retire. I'm going to retire. And now all that fucking money is gone. It's gone. Every fucking dollar I saved was gone, put in that business to keep it alive, and it happened in 2 years. So I'll never take it for granted. I'm going to keep working until I'm 70, 80, shake everybody's hand and say thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got to think just technically, opposition in the United States, that would be a win if not only you can degrade it in every other financially, spiritually, ethically, culturally, to also then get people to leave the military. You go, this is not what I'm fighting. That's also a win if you think of just, just five-dimensional psychological warfare. You'd be like, yeah, if you can't go toe to toe with the United States, gun for gun, ship for ship, disillusion them to the point where the brass leave. I mean, but I'm not criticizing what he did. No, what he did was right. That's how you get, that's, I think that's proof of the pudding. That's like, yeah, no, that's a leader. That's a guy that says, fuck this. Um, in terms of never taking it for granted again. Yeah. I mean, even just doing this podcast, like 8 years ago, if you asked me like, First Amendment, I'd be like, yeah, you can say whatever you want. You're free to, if you want, you can light a flag on fire, you can burn a crucifix. Sure. Like, it's just kind of like it's again, 1492, Columbus crossed the ocean. But it's like social, yeah, okay, whatever. Doing this show and suffering censorship during the height of COVID, before they went on Rogan, they were his biggest episodes ever, now behind Trump. But Dr. Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine, and Dr. McCullough, most published cardiologist in world history. Before they both went on in November and December 2021, respectively, I had them on my show multiple times. That's why I got banned from YouTube. But I had on the inventor of the mRNA vaccine.
Did you get back on?
No, no,
No.
absolutely no, 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 permanently, no, permanently banned.
Permanently.
Oh yeah, no, almost 4 years now. Yeah, no, no, fuck them. They're communists. Same iTunes, Reddit, like yeah. My point is because at first I was like, I'll have on a doctor and talk about this, and I was so naive that I was getting these strikes from YouTube. I was like, well, what if I just get the authority, like there's the buck stops here. The high, I'm like, there's this guy, Doctor Mul. Okay, he's got it, and I had him on, and we talked for like 2 hours. I was like, this is fantastic, and he was saying, he's like, yeah, there are some downsides, and if you're young, you probably shouldn't get it. I was so naive and thinking like, oh, we can all be adults, and we had a good dis instantly banned. And in that same manner, I will never, Elon owns Twitter now, and Facebook's coming to the table and really or and lessening or taking off entirely censorship. I'll never take it for granted again. Just like making sure all the podcasts are always on external hard drives, making sure I was backed up on, upload to YouTube, but also on Rumble, on BitChute, on Brighteon, on CloutHub, on Twitter, on, Frank Speech, on everything. And now it's less of a fight or flight response, but I'll never forget that in terms of just basic things. And in 10 years and 20 years, when this is all just kind of a weird fever dream. But yeah, remember when America just kind of like came to the edge of a Marxist takeover? Like, yeah, that was odd. That was odd. I'll never take it for granted again. And again, I don't want to in any way compare myself to anyone that's ever served the country or, my great uncle was on D-Day. I'm not trying to make that comparison at all. Just full disclosure. But in the same abstract sense, I I get it. I get it's like, yeah, well, Grandpa still got a bar, buried in his backyard. I kind of get it. And I'm like, or like the Delta guys I know. I got to go have like like breakfast with one of them. And he had a pistol with a 33 round mag just sticking out. And I'm like, yeah, there's something that it doesn't go away. I've had Mike Duran on, the Black Hawk Down pilot. You can
Mm-hmm.
you can see something that, or even I get to hang out with one of the Delta Force guys. Even just talking to them, you see their eyes are constantly dark. I mean, eerie. Everything around, every doorway, every tree. And you go, there's something that you just don't. ever move on. And I think it's good not to. I think it's good not to. And, you know, I think that's maybe what we needed. 4 years of craziness under Trump, and you're like, wow, these people really will do anything. And then 4 years after a stolen election, you go, oh, wow, they hate us. They hate the United States. They hate Christianity. They hate white people. They hate nuclear families. I think we probably needed that as a populace because now there's, let's just say it's half of the country. There's now 150 million people who are not gonna let that go away. If you have like 1 million, like that's just kind of a hardcore, like, faction. I think you now have most of the adult population of the United States who are not gonna raise children, forgetting just how close we came to just utter destruction. And it's a tough sell, but I think we needed it. And I think it's ultimately probably what's gonna save this country for, until another 100 years when they do some other shit. But I think we needed that, and in a way that only the infinite wisdom and foresight of God can have. It's only clear in hindsight, but I think we needed it. I mean, the bullet grazing Trump's ear was metaphorical for, I think, just the bullet almost hitting the brain of America. Like, so I know I'm kind of rambling off, but I really do think I think we needed the last 4 years, and I think one day we will be eternally grateful for it.
And America will one day uh, write about it in the history books how this was the worst presidency of the last 4 years, probably equivalent to Richard Nixon's presidency, and the downfall and the fallout that came from the Nixon presidency. One thing that very surprising too, Tommy, if you look at the Joe Biden 4 years, he wasn't cognitively apt to taking over the country. He wasn't making those
No,
decisions.
of course not.
There was a group of people behind the scenes that we didn't elect making the decisions for the American people, and that is a larger than life fallout that's not been investigated. And I hope that as time goes on, it can be investigated and we can find out what happened so it never happens again. We saw in that debate when he went with President Trump, he couldn't even put his sentences together, and he was making decisions with trillions of dollars to give away to other countries. He was making decisions. Somebody behind the scenes was making decisions to open our border, then allow millions of criminals to come to our country that inflicted harm and crime upon our citizens. And hundreds of thousands of children were raped. Children were murdered. And then we lost 300. We hear this over and over in the media. 365,000 children were lost to sex trafficking. They just disappeared. That is a just crime against humanity. It wouldn't be allowed in any other nation in the world, and the media doesn't even talk about it. The mainstream media, you got to get to these smaller news medias or YouTube to be able to talk about it. And it's going to go down in history as one of the worst presidencies of our country's ever seen, financially for the average American person, as the average wealth of the richest persons doubled, quintupled, tripled, but yet the average American person suffered. But the rich of the richest of the richest became wealthier because of the stock market increase, the inflationary expansionary of money, the rise of asset prices, homes being unaffordable, commercial buildings doubling, tripling in value. So, like you said, it's going to go down as one of the worst history presidential cycles ever known to mankind. But maybe our country did need it so that we can appreciate the good that's about to come, because things are about to get good for the American people.
And then in terms of, I'm with you. The yeah, I hope it's because we can't just like ignore like what just happened. Like, hey, they just propped up a dementia-riddled zombie, and it had an unelected, unnamed cabal around them making decisions with the world's most powerful military and economy. Like, that can't be something that we just go, yeah, that was weird. Anyway, like, no, 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 hold on, no, no, no. Like, if you just saw a unicorn, you'd be like, yeah, there's a unicorn. You'd be like, now hold the phone. Did anyone else just see that fucking unicorn? Like, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to be, yeah, and And the theft of the 2020 election. Like, I'm not okay with just being like, well, we learned from it, and now, like, no, 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 that has to also be dissected, autopsied, and reverse engineered, and then preventative steps put in place in concrete and steel to make sure that doesn't happen again. Um, in terms of more, even I guess farther zoomed out, big picture, is this just the same cyclical? Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. Are we just seeing another cycle of that? And is that kind of like an unavoidable, I don't know, bedrock theme of human civilization? Like, it was just hard. Now everyone is going, no, 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 don't take this for granted. We got to make things better. Is this just something that in two, three generations will drift away again, and then we'll have another, I don't know, brinkmanship moment? Not that you have the answer, but in your
Yeah, I mean, that's a
estimation.
good. And you're talking about that book, Generations, one of the most famous books written, that talks about the population ecology of our American system. Recommended by Bill Clinton. I remember seeing a Tony Robbins video on YouTube. How he said he was sitting in President Clinton's office, and the words that you just spoke were spoken from President Clinton's mouth to Tony Robbins as he sat in the Oval Office to. Mentor him
Yeah.
as he was going to be investigated about the Monica Lewinsky scandal back in the day, God, 30, 35 years ago. So I believe it is. It's like, if we look at our American history for the last 700 years, it has been the same cycle. Every 80 years, it's up and down. We have, like you said, good times create weak people and bad times create strong people. And right now, you can see the country garnering together its tacit resources, not the resources of money, because the money's been squandered and given away, but the resources of the American patriot. And not only the American patriots, but all walks of life have now come to our way of thinking to think, yeah, you got to put America first. And if you put America first, then you're strong, then you can help others. Yeah, if you come from a military strategic stance of strength and peace by strength. Yeah, that's a good idea because nobody's going to mess with you. And then that way, nobody's going to attack you. Nobody's going to attack your allies. Who would have ever thought something like that? So this nonsense that the Democratic left has put out the last 4 years about um, being involved in senseless wars and participating financially in these wars and coming up with these crazy experiments that were used in corporate America and then attempting to do that in our military that just weakened our military beyond belief. I think, yeah, it did. It's a cycle. It brought us down to the bottom of the U curve. And now the way is to go up. And you're going to see the people, the young women and men that join the military today are going to be the strongest warriors you've seen in decades. Right now, we had, again, this was talking to my previous veterans, brothers and sisters that still serve in the military. They were told that people that were transgender should be promoted because they were transgender. Now, I don't know what your personal belief is on this, but this is
That's
just
retarded.
absolutely
That's retarded.
radically
That's re
insane.
that's
You
retarded.
know, now I want to work for a person that's worked their ass off, that's a good leader, that's well respected, that's got good grades, that knows how to get along with people and knows how to protect my life, not because that person wants to transition their gender. So they were attempting to promote people in the military because they were gender transitioning or they were dressing like a girl when they're a guy or vice versa. Absolutely fucking nuts. So if that's going on and they're promoting this actively in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion, if that's going on, it just brings our state of readiness down to zero. And we're the laughing stock of the enemies around the world. And that's why we had an attack on October 7th in Israel. That's why we had Putin step over that line that Joe Biden told him not to step over. That's why you had Iran emboldened and,
Hmm.
lobbying all these different, challenges at the Americas. We gave Iran $6 billion when they were bankrupt years ago. And that money was used to fund terrorism that later led to October 7th. I mean, the decisions that were made for our country where it's like you just pick the wrong decision and do it over and over and over. And now that the worst is over, common sense, pragmatic leadership is in the White House, and it's being, all these crazy um, leadership positions are being changed out to just people, not even conservatives, Tommy, more just common sense. Like, let's do what's good for our country so that we can become strong and we can help other countries become stronger. Like, there's a concept right there, not like just weaken your American people and weaken these people that pay our tax dollars. So right now, I believe you're going to see the strongest patriots in history in the last 80 years join the military. You're going to see the people that are on the sidelines that said, I can't serve in that type of environment, but I can serve under Pete Hegseth. I can serve under somebody that I respect. I can serve underneath a master magician that's able to get along with those on the bottom, those troops that are out on the front lines, working their butt off for $1,000 a month and putting themselves in harm's way, but then get on TV and talk to millions of people and put out the message because he's a master communicator. You're going to see people join the military that are of the utmost strength, and you're going to see a huge shift in that curve of the military where the alliance and the warfighter force becomes extremely emboldened, strong, and that's going to build upon successes and more successes. And they're going to raise the pay rate for the military. They're going to make decisions that's in the benefit of the military, and they're going to get all that just asinine procedures and policies and experimental programs out that I just alluded to that destroyed the morale of the military over the last 4 years.
And the cyclical nature of it. I don't know. I think like yeah, so it can't be avoided. And then I wonder, and should it even be avoided? Is it not part of, like I'm not a parent, but if I was, or if I could go talk to like 10-year-old me, I'd be like, yeah, like, your first crush, like, yeah, experience sucks. When you get caught drinking, that's gonna suck. Your parents are gonna kill you. The first speeding ticket, it's gonna suck. Getting dumped is gonna suck. You're gonna smoke weed and get too high, and it's gonna suck. And you're gonna get a bad grade in college, and that's gonna suck. And all these things. But and no, and not even for a moment would I wanna make younger me avoid them. Because I'd be like, these are all very good for you. Like these are good for you. They'll make you who you are or and who you're to become. So it's if I look forward in 80 years or 100 years, would I not be robbing our descendants of trials and tribulations, but also opportunities to rise to the occasion? Because so like let's go like the greatest generation. And let's say they somehow, let's say they just, they just mastered the fourth turning. There was just no more, they met, however, whatever. They just mastered it. There was just no more of that, 80-year drift or 250-year life cycle of empire. Would we want that? And if they were able to be born without it and then hypothetically master it, why couldn't we? Like why? And I get why they're the greatest generation. But if they could rise to the occasion, doesn't that kind of imply that well, they fixed it and therefore none of us ever have to do it again? That also kind of implies weakness. Like you don't have to do this because I also don't think you can, right? That doesn't mean don't make things better, leave the world better. Of course, that's how we go from, fucking being monkeys to where we are now. But there is also like, yeah, I wouldn't want if I had a son, I wouldn't want them to like not experience heartbreak. I wouldn't want them to not experience a hangover. I wouldn't want them to not experience, freaking out because your bills are due and you don't have enough. Those are all good things. And, you know, in the year, whatever, 2100, They go, man, things are getting bad again. It's, this is happening. Well, it's been 70 years since whatever, the second revolution. I don't know what would we even want to rob them of that? Be like, no, rise to the occasion. Like be be who you're meant to be. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I mean, if we could fix it all, maybe you do. I don't know, but I think you kind of want that crucible is what makes people. Even for some, and I'm not even necessarily talking about like bloody physical kinetic revolution. I mean, even just like the balls to say, "Hey, I'm going to get banned from YouTube, and I don't care if everyone's making fun of me. Something's fucked with these vaccines, and I'm going to interview this." Like it's a thing that makes you who you're to be. And so, I mean, and again, not that you have the answer, but I mean, I wonder, it's like, do we even want to rob them of that? If by not having some like techno utopia here, there's going to be descendants on another planet one day, and they're going to have to figure out how to, now what? Our biggest problem was to become multiplanetary. Now in 1,000 years, it's like, okay, we got to move away from this
Oh
stuff.
man, and it's going to be in our lifetime, Tommy, because
I know.
Elon Musk is going to be put people on Mars. We're having babies on Mars pretty soon.
Yeah. And then, but one day the Martians are gonna have to be like, way down the road, they're gonna be like, we have to figure out how we leave the solar system for reasons X, Y, and Z that we probably can't even fathom right now. But it's like, do we even want to take away those selection pressures that force you to become better? And I don't know if we do. It's, I don't know. It's maybe they do have to face it in 80 years and it's good for them. I have no idea. Now, again, not that you have the answer, but I mean, I don't know. But we're actually zip by. We're coming up on an hour, so I say we wrap this up. But
All right.
dude, I'd love to have you again sometime. I'd love to actually read the fucking book and you know, do a deep dive into it. But I
And when
appreciate
you
it.
get off, can we do me a favor and exchange phone numbers when you get off, please?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you want yeah, we'll just wrap it up here. I'll be
All
stopping around.
right.
So everybody listening, go into the description, go
Well,
grab the book. Hold on.